This video is on pronouns as parts of speech. A pronoun is a word that is used in place of one or more nouns or other pronouns. So for example, with the sentence, "Ask Dan if Dan has done Dan's work," you could see that pronouns could make the writing smoother and less clunky. We could write, "Ask Dan if he has done his work." He and his are used in place of Dan. Pronouns have antecedents. An antecedent is the word or group of words that a pronoun stands in for. So if you see the sentence, "Frederick, have you turned in your report?" You and your are referring back to Frederick. They're the pronouns, and Frederick is the antecedent. Sometimes an antecedent is implied. So if you have the question, "Who asked that question?" the answer is whichever person asked the question. If Mary asked the question, then Mary is the implied answer to that antecedent. So who is the pronoun? Mary is the antecedent. It's important to keep your antecedents clear. If we say Randall saw Mike as he left the field, well, who left the field? Was it Randall or Mike? It's unclear. It would be better to say, as Randall was leaving the field, he saw Mike. Randall is the antecedent, and it's more clear that way. With a word like antecedent, it's useful to understand word groups, the Latin and Greek root words that words can be descended from. Ante means from before or in front. Sedere means to follow or yield. So when we put them together, the antecedent is the thing that went first. The antecedent yielded or gave up its spot to the pronoun. If you understand those word roots, the meaning of antecedent becomes more understandable. It's also useful to see the word roots used in other places too. Ante means before or in front, like we said. Antediluvian means from before the flood. You might say, which flood? It means from before the old story of Noah and the ark. So if something's antediluvian, it means it's very, very old. Antebellum means before the war. Now, in different places that could be different contexts, but most often it's used to mean before the American Civil War. So it often describes an antebellum house as those houses that were built back then. Now we're going to see the 6 different kinds of pronouns. The first is personal pronouns. Personal pronouns refer back to one of 3 things. The one who's talking, which is called first person. The one who's being spoken to, which is called second person. Or the one being spoken about, which is called the third person. So from this chart, we can see I, me, and mine are examples of a first person singular pronouns. Or they, them, theirs, and theirs are plural third person pronouns. Those are all different kinds of personal pronouns. Next, we have reflexive and intensive pronouns. Reflexive pronouns refer back to the subject of a sentence. They end in self or selves. These kind of pronouns are needed for the sentence to make sense. The sentence won't make sense without them. Compare it to an intensive pronoun. It emphasizes some other noun or pronoun. It also ends in self or selves, but the sentence would still make sense even if you cut it out. So, you could see an example of a reflexive pronoun. We said, Tara enjoyed herself at the party. Does this sentence make sense without the pronoun? If you said, Tara enjoyed at the party, you could say, no, something's missing from that sentence. And that's why it's a reflexive pronoun, not an intensive one. It's needed for the meaning of the sentence. Regardless, both reflexive and intensive all end in self or selves. Next, we have demonstrative pronouns. Demonstrative pronouns point out a noun. It's like saying, hey, look at this. The demonstrative pronouns include this, that, these, or those. They're a way to demonstrate things. Next, we have interrogative pronouns. These introduce a question. What, which, who, whom, whose. These are all the interrogative pronouns. You can remember that when a detective interrogates someone, they ask a lot of questions. So interrogative has to do with questions. Next, we have indefinite pronouns. They refer to nouns that may or may not be specifically named. If something's definite, we know what it is exactly. Well, these are the opposite of that. They're indefinite. We can see an example. Both of the girls forgot their lines. Well, there's a table of a lot of the indefinite pronouns, and both is the pronoun referring to the girls, but it's not specifically saying each girl one at a time, which is why it's indefinite. Most indefinite pronouns can also be used as adjectives. In the sentence, some are excited by this movie, some is standing in for people. In that case, it's being used as a pronoun. On the other hand, some people are excited by this movie. You can see that some is modifying people. It's being used as an adjective. The same word can be a different part of speech depending on how it's used. Next, we have relative pronouns. Relative pronouns introduce a subordinate clause. Now you're going to ask, what's a subordinate clause? That is an incomplete thought that's a part of a sentence. Clauses will get their own topic later. Seeing an example might help. For the relative pronouns, we have that, which, who, whom, and whose. Now here's our example. Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Declaration of Independence, was our country's third president. Who wrote the Declaration of Independence is the little part of a sentence called a clause, and who is the relative pronoun introducing that subordinate clause. It all depends on how it's being used. Elsewhere, who could be an interrogative pronoun. So these have been pronouns as a part of speech. We learned about antecedents and 6 different kinds of pronouns. I know we went over 6 things pretty quickly, but if you take your time and look at some more examples, you can really learn what they mean, and using these pronouns will make your writing more smooth. Thanks for watching.